So all my life growing up, my dad is a retired Teamster. My mom worked at the pizza place and the candy store on the corner. My dad always said, you go to work, you put your 30 years in, you get your pension, you retire. That was like instilled in me since I was a child. But I always wanted something more than that. I always wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to have my own business. And it took a long time to get there.
All right, let's get going. I want to welcome our guest, John Broda, to the show today. John, first and foremost, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me here, Brandon. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're visiting us from Rockford, Illinois today, and we got to meet in person. So I'm excited to actually have you on the show to share your stories with us today. And why don't you tell everyone here a little bit about your business?
All right, thank you. I am a realtor, so not every realtor is a real estate agent, but not all real estate agents are realtors. So that means I'm a member of the National Association of Realtors. I'm committed to education and ethics. So that's something we have to constantly be working on. Um, but I've jumped into real estate about 6 years ago, and I just love the opportunity to take my past, my background. I was a contractor and a carpenter for almost 20 years, to be able to take that knowledge to help people buy their first home, build some equity for themselves. So that's what I've been doing. I mean, I come from a family that does not own properties. So my mom and dad still rent the same apartment for the last 52 years in New York City. That's where I'm originally from. So seeing what I can do to help people buy a property, build equity for themselves, have that investment for their family and build generational wealth based on that house. When you can buy a house, in the 70s, my parents could have bought a house for 60 grand in New York City, which was expensive then, but they could have sold it recently for millions of dollars. That's life-changing money over 30, 40, 50 years. So I like being able to help people start that dream for home ownership and go there.
So let's talk about that. What problems do you help solve for people who are looking for a home? Like, what do they usually need help with the most?
Well, they're all afraid they're going to do something wrong. That's the biggest thing with buying a house. So you don't need someone like me to search for properties. There's so many websites that take our multiple listing service feed and put it on there. You have the big companies, the realtor.coms, and you could search for houses yourself. But when it comes to finding that perfect home, gaining access to that home, and then checking things you wouldn't know normally to look at, like mechanical systems, or is the deck secure on the back of the house? Are the windows, do they have lead paint? Do they not have lead paint? Like actual safety concerns. Has the electrical been upgraded? Or is it still fuse boxes from the 40s? Those are the types of things that a typical person doesn't know. And you don't know what you don't know, right? So trying to guide them through that process of how to get pre-approved for a loan. I had an older lady was referred to me recently. She's been told her whole life you need 20% down to buy a house. And she wants to buy a house now, finally. And she's in her 50s. And she's like, but I don't have 20%. I'm like, well, who told you that? Well, everybody says that. So fixing those myths, you could buy a house with as little as 5% down now. And there's grant programs depending on what state you live in and what cities you're in. I mean, I know Rockford right now, we have an IDA grant that they run every year until you run out of money. They'll give you 6 grand to $7,500 towards your down payment. And if you stay there 5 years, you don't have to pay it back. So it's like free money. You buy the house and you can get it. So just helping people get through that process. Searching for the house is the fun part, but making sure you feel comfortable and confident that you made the right choice when you don't know anything about mechanical systems or structure or sometimes the neighborhood. You might love the house, but you know nothing about the area. So you want somebody that's an expert to tell you, this is where the stores are, this is where the nightlife is. This street is very busy during the day. Do you want to live on a busy street or a not busy street? And give them, the websites they need to do their own research as far as schools and crime statistics and that to make an informed decision. So we're more of like a guide.
Yeah, and I'm sure in that process you get to see a lot of different neighborhoods, a lot of different houses, and you run across some things along the way. I'd love to hear if you have, because I know we all the agents I know have stories of things they see. Maybe something recently you run across that you're like, this just shouldn't be here, or this is odd, or this is a watch out for for a customer.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things. You see so many properties, so it's hard to pick and choose because we've seen so many crazy things. I get people send me properties all the time where there's a hot tub and sand in the basement. Somebody wanted a beach. I didn't personally see that, but you've seen that go around online. I get sent those all the time. I think the strangest one I had though was we had a full swim spa inside a three season room right off the kitchen. And when I was sitting in the kitchen for the open house, the spa would turn on because it has the cycle, and you couldn't hear anything because it wasn't insulated between that three season room and the kitchen. So imagine having Thanksgiving dinner and the spa's going off every 20 minutes or so. You're trying to talk over everybody. So like little things like that. I found a dance pole in a house once in the living room, which was a little different. But other than that, it's just different properties, different areas of town. The nicest one I saw, which was a flip eventually, somebody did buy it. It had a heart-shaped tub in the master bedroom. Like the bathroom and the bedroom was one open space with pink carpeting and heart-shaped jacuzzi tub and mirrors everywhere. And it was like, okay, this is a strange house, but it was built in the 50s or 60s, and that was the design they did when they built it. So to each their own.
Yeah, I mean, there's the right house for everybody, right?
Exactly.
I'd like to hear more about how you got started. So you mentioned some of your background in construction, but what made you pivot into real estate, and like what was your journey leading up to that, into that decision?
All right, yeah. So all my life growing up, my dad is a retired Teamster. My mom worked at the pizza place and the candy store on the corner. My dad always said, you go to work, you put your 30 years in, you get your pension, you retire. That was like instilled in me since I was a child. But I always wanted something more than that. I always wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to have my own business. And um, it took a long time to get there. So after high school, I decided not to go to college. I went into a sales job and met my wife in Rosemont, Illinois. That's how we met in 95. And I was selling baby products to dollar stores at the time. And then I got burned out from doing a lot of that and went into construction. And my best friend's dad got me into the Carpenters Union, which was a great job. My dad was so happy, like, yes, pension benefits, there you go. But and it was a great job. It was a great career. I had two kids then. I moved to Illinois full time. I transferred my union card and I worked in downtown Chicago every day, building amazing restaurants and high-end luxury apartments. And that's the kind of stuff I did. And in 2008, we all remember there was the mortgage-backed securities collapse. I don't call it the housing collapse because it wasn't housing that collapsed. It was the way they financed the housing that collapsed. So we had that collapse, and by 2009, that caught up to the commercial sector, and a lot of us wound up losing our jobs in construction. So, not knowing what to do, I started Roscoe Interiors. I said, I know how to sell, I know how to build. People can't get rid of their houses now because the values have dropped. They're going to need to fix them up. So I saw a need in my area, and a lot of companies that were established were going out of business because they had such high overhead. So it was nice to start a company in a recession, but it was also a lot of hard work. But I built that from just myself to me and four other guys. And we were doing kitchens and bathrooms and basement renovations and started doing large additions. And in 2015, it was like my best year and my worst year. So I had these eight very large projects, but I only made money on one. I broke even on two, and I lost big time on five of them. And I spent all of 2016 robbing Peter to pay Paul. It was a horrible time for my business. But it was like you don't want to just shut down and go bankrupt. You're trying to support families. You're trying to get projects finished. And it was very stressful. So I started looking for other ways to de-stress. And I found a program called Wake Up Warrior. And they were talking about, getting your life in balance between your family and your business and your bank accounts and you personally as well. And I started meditating. And that's what that was the weirdest shift. And I mean, I've told a few people this story and they get chills. Other people are like, oh, whatever. But I truly believe the universe will tell you where you need to be when you need to be there. Whatever you believe in, I call it the universe because it keeps everybody happy. But I was meditating and I saw a light. It was the weirdest thing. And it went smaller and smaller and smaller. And then it exploded like fireworks. And when all the fireworks came down, I saw a roof line. And I came out of my meditation and said, I need to sell houses. And that was in October of 2016. So I tell my wife, I go, I want to be a realtor. I think I can help people. Something's telling me I need to do this. And she said, okay, are we going to shut down the business? I said, yes, as soon as I get licensed. So I went to real estate school, didn't know anything about it. Um, went to classes 2 nights a week for 3 hours each night. Did that from January until April. They teach you a lot in real estate school on how to do a contract and stay out of jail, because there's a lot that goes into working with people's finances, but they don't teach you how to sell a house. They don't teach you how to look for clients. That's something you need to find a company to work with. I got licensed on May 4th of 2017, and I never looked back. And so now we're 5.5, almost 6 years doing this now. And that's where I made the pivot. I shut down the company. I did have to unfortunately file a bankruptcy. That is what the laws are there for. But you learn from those experiences. When I'm working with a client, when I work with a client now and they say, I had a bankruptcy 4 years ago, my credit's not that great, or I'm having struggles, I can empathize with them. I've been there. I've gone through that. So I want to be able to let them know they're not alone. And if you have the dream, talk to somebody. Let's get you on the right path. It might not be today, but within 6 months, a year, 2 years, we can take steps to get you exactly where you want to be for your goals, for you and your family. That's how I transitioned.
Yeah, no, I love that story, and it makes me think for you, I'm curious how you define success. Like, what impact are you hoping to make with your business moving forward?
All right. Well, I could say, money's nice. Don't get me wrong. We need to earn in order to have the things we want in life. That's just a fact of it. But success for me is all the people I get to help. In the time since I started, there's a statistic that says the average realtor sells, 6 to 8 homes a year. I've done over 100 homes since I started. I've had 100 transactions closed. That's success. And not every house is this big luxury home. I mean, I sell a lot of 60, $70,000 homes to people in certain areas of Rockford that just want to fire their landlord. And they're the first person in their family to ever buy a property. And they're living there with their wife, their kids, their spouses. And just, that to me is success. When I get to help them and they smile and they say, I didn't think we could do this. And then to follow up with them over the years, and they recommend me then to their cousins, their aunts, their brothers, their best friends to do the same, just to help that generational get out of renting and get into home ownership. And not to say renting isn't great for some people. I mean, it is. There's a need for it. But if you could rent a whole house for $1,500 a month or own a house for $1,200 a month, which is better for you? That's what you need to find out. I think owning it and having some equity, so when times get tough, you can refinance. You have an asset that you can sell if you need to. I think that's better than just renting and being at the mercy of somebody else to say your rent goes up this year because your lease expired.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you're in a crowded market. There's a lot of agents out there in real estate. And, when people are trying to find someone for them, I wonder what kind of people resonate with you. How do you stand out? How are you different? And what kind of people does that bring towards you that makes this really a successful partnership?
Well, I think the one thing that I bond with people because I'm genuine. I don't think about how much money I'll earn on a sale. I think about how I can help them. And all realtors, all real estate agents should work that way. But unfortunately, industries are industries and some people don't. But I don't pay for leads. I don't buy referrals. I have word of mouth referrals I get. I build relationships with people in my community that help me stand out. And if you're either going to like me or you're not going to like me, and I'm okay with that. If you feel I'm overbearing, that's good. That's fine. I mean, but I joke and I promote myself as rock star realtor, networking addict, and lover of the perfect cocktail. I mean, if you, that's all you need to know. I love people. I love working, and I love to have a good beverage. Like, I mean, that's me in a nutshell. And if you don't like people that are very vocal and talk a lot, I'm not your guy. If you don't like somebody that likes to have a drink every now and then, I'm not your guy. And I am a little, that whole rock star realtor thing, that's a little cocky, but I give rock star level service. I treat my clients as if they were in a green room ready to go on concert. Like, whatever they need, I get it for them. So that's why we do that.
Well, I love that. I mean, think people want to feel special when, especially when they're out there doing something new and they feel a little unconfident in themselves because they don't know the area as well. They want an expert. They want someone who feels like they are confident in the area. They're confident in their knowledge. So I think bringing that to the table puts people at ease. So I think that's a good quality. Obviously, you're not from Illinois. I think we've heard this in your story. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what brought you to the state, sure, but like to Rockford specifically. I've been out there, beautiful town, but what brought you there? What do you love about it?
Well, like I said, I met my wife at a trade show in Rosemont. I'm from Sunnyside, Queens, New York. So when you watch the Spider-Man movies, if you're a Marvel fan, you watch like Homecoming and he's fighting in the bank scene. That's the Chase Bank on the corner where I grew up. That's the elevated train. I lived like one block from there. That's where I grew up. So, but I was selling baby products at dollar stores, and I was at a trade show in Rosemont. That's where all the vendors were at the show, and people from all over the country that own stores come and purchase new product. And I was introduced to my wife by a friend of ours, somebody she worked with, and we just hit it off. I mean, we met in July. I asked her to move to New York in October, and I asked her to marry me in December. And we've been together almost 28 years. We just celebrated 25 years of marriage. We have 3 kids, but right away we bought a house. We were the first ones in my family to own a home. And that was in Long Island, just outside of Queens. So to give you a reference, it would be like downtown Chicago, if you're in that area, driving to like Arlington Heights. That's would be the distance from where I grew up to where we bought our first house. And then we had our first kid in 99, and it was great, but it was a small house. It was 1,000 square foot, 100-year-old colonial. There wasn't a lot of room. And then my wife surprised me and told me, 9 months into our first son, that she was pregnant again. And I was like, we need a bigger house. But the housing market in New York City, even then, was so expensive. So she's from this area. Her mom lived in Wonder Lake in McHenry County, which is 2 counties east of where I am now. And so we came out to visit, and we were looking, and my wife had some friends that she grew up with that lived in Belvedere, which is just right next to Rockford in Boone County. And we found a house there first, new construction. It was amazing. It was $128,000 for a brand new house with 3 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms. And I was just like amazed by this coming from New York, because our little colonial 1,000 square foot house was like 265,000. So it was like, whoa. And I transferred my union card. I was a union carpenter at that time, and I started working in McHenry County and driving to Chicago, and we lived there. And then when my oldest son was ready to start school, we left Belvedere and we moved to Roscoe, which is about 15 minutes north of Rockford, right near the Wisconsin border, and because it was one of the best school districts in our area. And so I'm in a little town called Roscoe. I'm in Chicory Ridge is our subdivision, and you know, it's just become home. And I've been here now 21 years. I've been living in Illinois, so it is home now, except my accent comes out every once in a while when I say coffee or certain other words. But I got to learn about the area, and then I started helping the people between my construction company first and now in real estate. So I really feel at home in Winnebago County. I have Rockford, which is an amazing city, just minutes away. I'm an hour and a half to Chicago. I'm an hour and a half to Milwaukee, an hour to Madison, 2 hours to Dubuque. We're like centrally located. We have so many great things you can do just in minutes. So I think it's one of the best areas in the world to live in, just because of those items. I mean, if you love the outdoors, we have more forest preserves and state parks in Winnebago County than anywhere else in the state. if you like golf, we have tons of golf courses, private, public, and country clubs. Rivers, the Rock River's right here. We have the Sugar River. People go tubing on that all the time. It's just fishing. It's all right here. And then if you want the nightlife, we have downtown Rockford, which you stayed there. We have that beautiful hotel now, the Coronado Theater. We just had the Goo Goo Dolls and then Chelsea Handler, like right here in Rockford. And it's not a huge city. I mean, Rockford's a small city, but it's maybe half the size of Brooklyn, New York. But it feels like this big mecca now with all the great things going on in our community.
Yeah, I could attest to that as well. I had a great time when I was out there. I'll ask you this, because you have a lot of people that are coming to you looking for help with their home buying experiences and selling, I'm sure. What are the one or two questions that you get asked the most?
The biggest one is, how much money do I need to bring? How much do I need to buy a house? And number two, I get is always, my credit is bad. How do I fix that?
So let's start with the how much is the right amount kind of question. How do you start to answer that question? You have to go full into it, but how do you get that
Right.
conversation started?
Well, I tell them, I go, well, it depends on what you qualify for. So I would want to introduce them to a loan originator. I work with a couple of amazing ones, whether it's an independent brokerage that does mortgages, a local bank, a credit union. It's really up to who the person prefers to work with. Some people like to work with their local bank, and I know every loan originator in town. So I have great relationships with all these people to help. So it's matching that buyer with the right lender first. But I tell most people, most of the time you need about 5 to 7%. You don't need it all in cash, but you will need some. You need a credit score usually right above 580 to 640. And that's the minimums. From there, we can figure out any price range. And we also want to know what your budget is. When they say, how much do I need? Well, how much do you want to spend each month? Because just because a lender qualifies you to buy a $300,000 house does not mean you should buy a $300,000 house if you only want to spend $1,000 a month for a mortgage. I had that happen for myself. I was a union carpenter when I moved here, and they qualified me for $380,000 because of my income. But I knew I didn't want to spend more than 1 week's pay on my mortgage, a quarter of my income each month. So I wanted to be under $1,500 a month. And that's what we did. I'm still, to this day, my mortgage is right around $1,000 because that's what I'm comfortable spending. So what are you comfortable spending on a home? And that's the first steps. And once we have that written down and we kind of know what you want to spend and how much you think you can afford, and then I ask you, where do you want to live? Because that's just as important. You might qualify for a house in one spot, but you don't want to live there. You want to live on the other side of town where there's more restaurants because you're a foodie, or you want to live right near the highway because you want to be able to get on the highway to go to work every day quicker. So what's important to you is my next step. And we just kind of build the process for that person.
Yeah, and those two right off the bat, I mean, that I think you're going to really hone in and like take the "we can live anywhere" question down to some very specific, I think, answers when you get past those couple. And then if someone does have, like, they need some work on figuring out, how do I get approved for a home given my history with whatever it is, credit or whatever, how do you help them along that journey?
Well, again, I introduce them to that loan originator and I tell them, we've heard everything, we've experienced. That's why I start telling them my story about how, listen, I had a bankruptcy. I've had bad credit. I've had great credit. I know the gambit. Don't be embarrassed. But the two people you always tell the truth to, right? They say is like your accountant and your priest. Well, it's also your loan originator. You have to let them know everything. They need to know every bit of your finances to make sure you qualify. And the people I work with will tell you pretty much all we need when we're done working with them and getting your paperwork in order is a house with an appraisal. So that's how qualified you get. You could go online, you could go to a big company, you could type in the Rocket and get a mortgage, but that's a pre-qualification letter, not a pre-approval letter. And then once you find that house, after you answer like 5 questions, now we have to go through the whole process of getting actually approved for the loan. But the people I work with, you'll be approved from day one. And if we can't approve you, we're not going to shop. because we don't want to get your heart set on a house that you can't get yet. If you can't qualify, then I work with credit counselors. I work with different programs that can help teach you how to budget and pay off debt and move along to get to that path of home ownership. So it's really just a resource. I'm more of the guy that's going to connect you with all the right parts to get you to the goal at the end of your travels.
No, I think that's amazing. And John, if people want to connect with you and get some help with that, if they're looking for some things in your area, what would you say is the best way for them to find you?
The best and easiest way would be to go to buywithbroda.com. So that's BUY with and then Broda, BRODA. That's my landing page. There's a little introductory video right there that tells you a little bit more about me. You can book in-person or a Zoom call with me because we work with technology and not everybody can meet at an office. Sometimes they want to just take a lunch break, get on their phone, do a Zoom call, and we could connect that way. You could also set up your search for properties, and you can also find out if you're selling a property, how I can help you with that as well. Because I love working with buyers, but I'm also a listing agent. So we have to try to balance how many we list and how many we work with. And that helps me a lot of times get a buyer for somebody looking to sell their house, and I can connect them together right away. So, but that's my best way, buywithbroda.com.
Appreciate that. And absolutely, if you guys are interested in looking for something, check him out. And I'll ask you one final question as we wrap up here. What are you excited about, either in business or in personal? What are you excited about these days?
Thanksgiving. I mean, I hate to say it. It's like, I love the holiday season. I love the fall. And I'm always grateful at Thanksgiving because it's like that one holiday where it's not about the presents. It's not about that. It's about getting together and being thankful for what you have and the people in your life. And so I always look forward to that, to this time of year when we're looking at Thanksgiving and being thankful and just reflecting on who I helped last year, who I can help next year, and my business partners, my referral partners, and my wife and kids, obviously, because they've supported me a lot over the years with different career choices. So I'm very grateful for them. So that's what I look forward to the most.
Amazing. Well, appreciate your time today, John. And if you guys are interested in hanging out with a rock star realtor, head to buywithbroda.com and check out what John's got going on over there. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for jumping on the call today.
Thanks very much, Brandon.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, we'll catch you next time.
Brands on Brands.